Hey everybody, Stained Glass Assassin here, coming at you with my first official video. Now I'm just familiarizing myself with video editing and images and lights, so I'm learning as I go. I'm sure there's going to be some bumps along the way, but I promise I'm going to try to make these videos better and better as I go. Now since this is my first video, I'm going to go ahead and just stick with something I'm comfortable with. I'm just going to go with a comic review. And that comic today is Bongo Comics Presents The Simpsons Comic Book Guy. Now, I know it's probably not the comic you were expecting, but it is a really fun book. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Simpsons comics, that is, I'll give you a little history. They began back in 1993, and they've been put out exclusively by Bongo. And they've had a number of offshoots. You know, Bart Simpson had a comic, Treehouse of Horror. I think Krusty even had a small miniseries. But, you know, it's just like any other big book. They splinter off. But they also put out other books like Futurama. I think SpongeBob had a book with Bongo as well. But unfortunately, 2018, Bongo Comics went defunct, and The Simpsons ended with issue number 245. I believe that's correct. Don't know what the future holds for The Simpsons, so they had a pretty good run. I'm hoping they come back, because they did have a lot of great books out there. But as for this book, this was a 2010 5-part miniseries. It was written by Ian Boothby, and for those of you who are Simpsons comic fans, you'll know that name because he's been involved with Bongo Comics since 1997, or at least with The Simpsons. He's written a number of The Simpsons books, but he's also written a lot of the Futurama books as well. We have pencils by Mark Delaney, and we have colors by Nathan Hamill. Those two have also worked on a number of Bongo comics, and the three of them have collaborated together a couple times, which really shows in this book because you'll see the creative team, when they put their heads together, they do a great job taking from one medium to the other. Boothby's writing really captures the essence of the characters, and not just the main characters, but even the minor characters. But the story itself, he writes a great story, and you'll see that here pretty soon. As for the artwork, it looks, again, same thing. It looks like they just plucked it from the TV and put it in the comic book. The colors, the characters, they all look legit. They look very, very nice. So I just want to say first and foremost that you don't have to be a Simpsons fan to appreciate this book. I mean, yes, if you are a Simpsons fan, you're going to get a lot more out of it because you'll know the minor characters. You'll know the references they make in the show. And I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that if you do read comics, you've come across the Simpsons at some point. I mean, you can't be on the air for 30 plus years and not know who they are. But I chose this book because if you're a geek like me, there's so much fun in the book. I mean, there's so many references to pop culture, comics, movies, you name it. It's just a fun book, and I don't laugh out loud too many times when I read a comic book, but this one had me rolling a few times, as you'll see here. As for the book itself, I do want to mention, this was 2010, and it was $2.99. That was the price tag. Now, I know a lot of books were $2.99 back then, but you get 32 pages for that $2.99. What are you paying for today for a 22-page book? $5? What are you paying for a 32-page book? $7? Yeah, you definitely get your money's worth out of this one here. So as you can see from the cover, it's a homage to Fantastic Four #1, but if you flip through the first couple pages, you'll see that there's a few more homage kind of fake variants. I mean, you've got Death of Superman, you've got Avengers, Death Be Not Proud, and then my favorite, The Crisis on Infinite Earths #7, the iconic Superman holding up Supergirl, but in this case, obviously, it's Homer hoisting up Comic Book Guy with the help of Dolph, Kearney, and Jimbo. Now, I know you might be thinking you got a bad vibe, something's going to happen to Comic Book Guy from these images, and you might be right, but let's not jump ahead. Let's just get to the story itself. So the story begins with Comic Book Guy trying to set a world record by reenacting as many awesome cinema deaths as he can in 60 seconds. You'll see here he's got Spock, he's got Captain Kirk, a little alien action, he's got Robin, and of course Optimus Prime. Now, extra geek bonus points if you recall that Jason Todd's death was left up to a fan vote, which is why he's holding the cue card, and of course the error right next to it with Optimus Prime giving Hot Rod the Matrix of Leadership when he actually gave it to Ultra Magnus in the animated movie. I know, I'm a geek. It is what it is. So anyway, it continues on. You got a little Serenity action. You've got Avengers Disassembled. comedian. You've got little Raiders, Gwen Stacy, and my favorite there, he's dressed up as the Death Star, so classic. So he goes to upload his video, and he thinks he's going to ascend to greatness, but he finds out quickly that he's being roasted instead for essentially copying GNK. It says here, you'll see pathetically derivative of the great GNK, epic fail, what a loser. So of course he says, well, who's this GNK? And Milhouse happens to be in the store, and he says, well, you mean the graphic novel kid? He's awesome. He did this thing where he recreated all these deaths, and then before he can finish, comic book guy snatches the comic out of his hand and overreacts by banishing him from the Android dungeon. As he's throwing out Milhouse, he bans Nelson, who's not even in the store. And then he turns and banishes everybody from the store for life. And this is what I was talking about. Boothby captures comic book guy perfectly, because that's exactly what he would do in the show. He overreacts, and then he follows up by yet another overreaction. So he does a great job, not just with comic book guy, but you'll see even the minor characters, he really nails them. So as he's re-entering the store, he takes a moment to reflect, and we find out that comic book guy just wants to make a name for himself. He feels as though he's meant for something more. And as he's reflecting, he gets an email. When he opens up the email, he discovers that Lard Lad is having a contest for a new mascot, as the previous mascot had a powder and jelly related heart attack. So naturally, comic book guy thinks that this is his calling and that he is meant for this role. So the next chapter begins with him downtown at Lard Lad. He's standing in line. He's talking with Homer. We see Chief Wiggum and Homer. Obviously, they're going to compete. And comic book guy reaffirms that he's going to be the winner. But he's interrupted by somebody from behind saying, "Nay, I will be the winner." And he turns, and lo and behold, he comes face to face for the first time with none other than the graphic novel kid. So they immediately begin by trading barbs, and he says, "Indeed, it's like meeting my bizarro clone, a sad copy. Oh, no, you're the copy." And then, like geeks, he says, "Perhaps we should settle this like men. A message board flame war? Unless you haven't got the emoticons." But before they can go on, Krusty interrupts them and informs them that the challenge portion of the contest will begin. So we see the challenges. It goes with a classic donut eating contest, and then we have a who can be dunked in hot coffee the longest, and of course you see another reference there, the Terminator 2, and then my favorite, the Maze of Glaze, and how Ghostbusters, more like Ghostbusters 2. Now, despite comic book guy's best efforts, graphic novel kid is ultimately the winner, and my favorite panel of the entire book is here where comic book guy is on his knees, "No!" And he says, "Was that your impression of Darth Vader from Revenge of the Sith?" And he says, "Technically, it was an impression of the Star Wars fans who sat through Revenge of the Sith." So as a part of the grand prize, graphic novel kid is gifted a Lard Aston Martin, a car that is powered purely on donut grease. And comic book guy immediately curses the car with every fiber of his being. Now, as he's driving away, Bart points out that the car is on fire, but before anyone can say anything, the car explodes, and graphic novel kid is seemingly dead. Now, of course, comic book guy thinks that his curse is what caused the car to explode, and naturally he thinks he has superpowers. But after a disappointing experiment, he finds out it was just a coincidence. Afterwards, he comes to the realization that losing was actually a blessing in disguise, because had he had won, it would have been him in the car, and it would have been him that exploded. So he has an epiphany, and he says from this day forward, he's going to live life to the fullest, and he's going to seize the day and make every moment count. And in typical comic book guy fashion, later that night, he's watching a 36-hour marathon of the Manimal. So we enter the final chapter of the book, which takes place at Springfield Mall, and there's a movie memorabilia auction to which the comic book guy attends. You'll see here, they have all the geek stuff. They have Cap's shield, you've got R2-D2, Iron Man armor. I mean, it's all there, right? So comic book guy proceeds to buy every single item that is being auctioned. Of course, it angers everybody in the crowd, and comic book guy stands up and makes an epic speech, basically saying you have to live life to the fullest, buy whatever you want, whenever you want. And then, heroically, he throws Cap's shield, "Fulfilled life, assemble!" And in a Final Destination-like chain of events, everything goes wrong, which ultimately leads him tripping and falling onto Super Guy's rocket, which flies up and hits the ceiling and explodes. And of course, everyone's in disbelief. Nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows what to do. And the final panel of the comic ends with a silhouette of our special guest for book number 2. I wonder who it could be. And with that, issue number 1 of Comic Book Guy comes to a close. As you can see, you really don't have to be a big Simpsons fan to enjoy this book. Plenty of fun references to the geek culture, movies and comics and whatnot. So this continues on for the next 2 issues especially, but the whole series is definitely a good read. I definitely want to give props to the creative team because, again, they definitely capture the essence of the show itself. I mean, it really just feels like you're reading an episode. They did a great job with that. So if you've read the book, if you like it, if you didn't like it, let me know in the comments. If you haven't read it, let me know if you're interested in it. But either way, leave some feedback down below. Definitely stay tuned. I'm going to have issues 2 and 3 coming up here pretty soon. But I also have some other great content in the works. I got MCU Phase 4 directional video. Got some TV reviews, retro video games. It's just going to be a fun time. That's what I want this channel to be. So be sure to subscribe so you know when those videos come out. And until then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.